Welcome back to Mindful Endeavors. I'm your host, New Age Alchemist. As always, like to start off with a disclaimer saying that we're not mental health professionals. We're not advocating or giving any medical advice. We're just here talking about the topic of mental health and as well as the outdoors and how they kind of play together in terms of providing some kind of decompression and stress relief. We encourage you to seek help if you need it, and of course, as always, we encourage the conversations to keep going. Okay, so Maddie, you are girlfriend of a guest that we had before, NorCal Tenkara, Nick, and that's how kind of you put me through, and through you, and then definitely want to have you on. So also, you are very active on Instagram. You have a hiking page, and I do love to hike, even though I moved away from California to Texas, where there's not a whole lot to hike. That was a little, I kind of shot myself in the foot, metaphorically speaking, but go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, so my name's Maddie. I'm from Paradise, California, and I'm a backpacker and hiker. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you are also a, backpacker and hiker, and you kind of more focus on the hiking aspect, whereas, Nick kind of, he does the whole Tenkara fishing, right? But he did mention in the podcast that you guys do take backpacking trips together. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm just really thankful that he likes to go, because before I met him, I was mostly going alone. I actually started off solo backpacking back in 2018. So I was like doing this by myself for a long time before I met anybody else who really enjoyed it. So it's been a lot of fun to see him try something totally new, because he's never done it before, and be able to expand on his hobbies through it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Has he gotten you into Tenkara fishing or no?
No, I'm not patient enough.
You're not. Oh my god. So it does require patience then?
Yeah, I'll be there 2 minutes. I'm like, I'm not catching anything. I'm gonna go climb something. I don't know. I just to be on the move all the time.
Oh man. Well, I mean, tell us how you kind of got into hiking. I know you just did the solo thing, like the solo backpacking for a little bit, but were you hiking way before 2018 or?
Not a whole lot. I really started hiking back in high school and college. I'm a photography major, so that was my area of study all through school, and I love art. And I had a friend who lived in the Feather River Canyon near where I live, and there's just so many hiking opportunities out there. So he would take me these places and show me these places, and I would take my camera, and I would always get these crazy shots of places that are surprisingly local, and everybody really seemed to enjoy them, and I just liked the adventure aspect of it. And then I eventually just started kind of seeing how far I could go. It was fun, some of the places we'd go, I'm like, oh my god, I didn't think I could do that. And I did it, and I'm like, man, I really want to push myself to the limits and figure out how far can I go. So I actually started kind of getting away from the photography aspect of it. I got kind of annoyed that I was spending too much time behind the lens. I felt like I wasn't really in the moment, and I was missing out on a lot of stuff. So I just started hiking around. We have a lot of places around here to go, within a 30 drive. I started doing that. And then I started doing that alone pretty quickly, just because it's so hard to find people that like to hike or really do much of anything. And I'm like, I'm not going to wait around for all these people to figure their lives out. I'm going to go. And that led me to backpacking. I took my first solo backpacking trip in October of 2018. And it was I was so bad at it. My pack was 40 pounds. And I went probably 3 miles round trip, and I thought I was going to die. I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. And I don't know. I just I fell in love with it. And unfortunately, November 2018, I lost my home and my town in the campfire. And oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I had all my backpacking gear. I was I knew I was bad at it, but I was already kind of tossing around the idea of the PCT. I was just that enthralled in it. It felt so right. And yeah, that happened. And I'm like, oh my God, what do? You don't ever expect that to happen to you.
Right.
So I kind of got myself back up on my feet the best I could. and I just like devoted everything I had to continuing that, and I've been doing it ever since. So that's
I mean, first of all, I'm kind of shocked that you just kind of like mentioned like the fires, like, oh, like, fire happened. And it's like, wait, what?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, because I mean, I'm not a stranger to that. Like, I grew up in Southern California, so I remember there was times where my mom would walk me to school and she would tell me like, cover your mouth, or should have me put something over my mouth because the sky was gray and not in a dark cloudy way. It was just really gray, or sometimes you would see you would wake up in the morning, look outside, and you'd see all the like the little ash just piled up on maybe like about a quarter inch high off the cars. So and yeah, so I get that part, but so yeah, when it comes to like what you're saying about hiking, like you didn't really could do so much, like yeah, because the one hike I remember, one of my friends took me off the coast of Palos Verdes, in Southern California, and on the way down, I was like, oh, this is not too bad and everything, and then she was telling me like, okay, so now we're pretty much done. We can keep going, and it's like another 5 miles or 6 miles. It's super easy, or we can go back this way. It's only like 2 miles because we were basically coming down off the shore, so we saw like like the whales and a bunch of manatees and stuff like that. But then it was shorter that way, but there was some rock climbing involved, unfortunately, and I was just like, rock climbing. Yeah. So I mean, and for some reason, like this, I mean, my friend, she's like 5'1", like 90 pounds, like like, and she tells me like, hey, you should go first, and I'm like, wait, what? And like, yeah, and I'll go right behind you. I'm like, no, what if I slip and fall? You're like, you're pretty much done, you know. So, but luckily I made it. Just like the sheer like motivation of like, don't fall because you will crush your friend. Don't fall, don't fall. Made it up there. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So anyway, so please let us know. Like, I mean, please let us. Sorry. Please tell us more about like how like like the hiking and the backpacking, because I mean, you do tend to get into different adventures like when you're backpacking, especially out in areas where you're not familiar with. But how does that kind of like help you when it comes to like mental health and like
Oh man,
decompress yourself?
how doesn't it? It's like the only thing that makes me feel right. Like when everything else could be just terrible, that's the only thing that like does it for me. And I think a lot of it is it's like you learn lessons when you're backpacking that you can just really apply to everyday life. For example, like kind of like what you mentioned, like pushing yourself to the limits, and like you can do a lot more than you think, and that
Mm,
that like bleeds through to everyday life too. So at the fire, I had this terrible event. I basically lost everything I owned. I had my car and the clothes I was wearing that day and my purse, and that was it. So it's like when you're in situations like that, sometimes it's hard to like stop and think like, what am I actually capable of? Like, can I get through this? Do I have the resources to do this? Like, am I smart enough to do this? Am I strong enough to do this? And it's like, I think, with backpacking is very similar because it's like this situation where you can't just like quit. You're stuck in it. Because it's like, if you're 5, 6 miles out and you're like, oh, I'm too tired. I want to go back, or I'm done with this. I just want to go home. Well, you still have to go that 5 or 6 miles back. You can't just give up. So I
mm-hmm.
backpacking taught me a lot of persistence and to just really try every day, even if it seems hard and even if it seems impossible and even if it hurts, because it's like it's going to get better and you're going to get better. So it was like I kind of tried to apply some of those lessons I learned, just getting over the fire and getting through that, because it's sometimes you look at the big picture of something terrible that's happening in life, or a feeling that you're feeling, and it's just so big and daunting, and you're like, how the heck am I ever going to conquer that? But if you try every day, you definitely can. So that when I initially lost my home, I stayed in a friend's apartment. Well, she wasn't even really a friend. She was kind of just a coworker. She let me stay in her apartment, and we stayed there for about a week. And we looked for housing pretty much immediately because we knew what was going on. We couldn't find any nearby. So I ended up moving to this town, this orchard town, like an hour away from where I work. And I had no family. The person I was living with wasn't very patient with my grieving process. And I had just a lot of time alone to figure out what the heck just happened. And I started running and I started preparing because I told myself I was going to do this 100-mile hike. I was going to do this a section of the Pacific Crest Trail that's 100 miles, and I was going to do it by myself. And I was going to crush that. And, I was going to, if I could be strong enough to do that, like maybe I could get over this trauma that happened in my life. And I just pretty much devoted everything when I lived there to that. I would run I did this thing where I'd try to run 5 miles in 40 minutes and see how many times I could do that back to back to back to back. And that's all I would do when I lived there. And I eventually ended up, there's an opportunity for me to move back. My parents' home, they're north of Paradise, and they have a big horse ranch, and it survived somehow. And my mom had this like super dilapidated travel trailer. She's like, "Oh, you can just come live here. It's great. Come back to the ridge. Like, we miss you," and all this stuff. And so I was thinking, like, I figured the travel trailer is probably pretty crappy because it's sort of how it is up there. And I'm like, oh God, like, do I want to do that? Like, do I want to just try to find an apartment for myself? What am I going to do? And I just kind of remembered, like, what is best for me to go on this hike? Because everything I worked towards was just going on this thing. And I ultimately decided that living in the travel trailer was the cheapest option, and I could buy more backpacking gear if I lived. So I decided to live there and continued to live there for a year and a half. And then, when I moved back there, I told my mom of my plan to do this hike and this backpacking trip. And she's like, "Well, who are you going with?" I'm like, "No one. Like, I'm going with me. I got to sort some stuff out. I don't know what's going on. Like, I lost all sense of permanence. Like, nothing feels like home. I lost, like, I'm an artist. I lost all of my art. Unfortunately, my pets also died in the fire, my 3 cats. So I had a lot of things going on where it's just like, why me? Like, this sucks. And I was struggling with a lot of depression. I had alcohol problems before, admittedly, but they definitely got worse. And I finally just said, like, look, enough is enough. Like, I can keep wallowing in self-pity, or I can go do something about it. And that's when I did that hike. And I mean, that hike completely changed my life. It really puts things in perspective and, shows you that you really are strong enough to overcome these big obstacles, even when you feel like you can't. So I think I like backpacking because it gives you that solitude. It gives you the time to think. It's a challenge, and it's important to kind of move at a more human speed sometimes, because it's easy to get lost and all jumbled up with like everything that's happening in the world, or even sometimes just things that are happening in your life or your community, and it's overwhelming. And sometimes it just feels like too much, and you're like, I can't take any more. But then you go out there and you backpack and you just walk, and you're moving at a human speed, like the speed you're supposed to. There are no screens and lights and all this crap going on. It's just like, the core essence of, like, I don't know, like, what it means to be a human and just moving at your speed. So
yeah, like what it means to be part of the biosphere versus like how I think, I mean, just because, I mean, it's not, I don't know if it's out of pure arrogance or something, or just because, we're, like you said, we're just constantly in like the hustle and bustle. Like we tend to think that we're not part of the biosphere when we really are. We somehow, because, we live in concrete jungles or, suburbs and stuff like that, we're a little bit more displaced. So we don't really consider like that we are, nature. Like, even though, yeah, to a certain degree we can manipulate it, I guess. But like you said, like it really kind of puts things in perspective, because that's one of the things that kind of made me want to take the route of the podcast the way I'm taking it in terms of mental health and the outdoors. Because like you said, like your experience kind of like gave you a lot of soft skills that they are beneficial in other aspects of life. And I feel the same way when it came to fishing, because fishing is truly like my first like real like outdoors activity that I actually really got into. I hiked here and there, but it wasn't like, I mean, I wanted to do it a lot, but I don't know. I guess I was just lazy and my priorities were shifting, during that time. So, yeah, but and it's really good that you talk about that, because like, yeah, like you're the perfect example of like how like a lot of people like if you get out and do it, you'll realize that you can do a lot more than when you think most of the time. Like, and a lot of people, I think, when it comes to starting even something that's like not related to the outdoors, is like starting a business. A lot of people think that they can't do it, but if you really just try, like, you never know like how much you can really accomplish, and that perseverance can push you through a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people use that excuse too. They'll be like, "Oh, well, I'm not as fit as you," or "I don't have as much time." I've had people ask me like, "Oh, well, you don't work." So, and I'm like, "No, I work a 40-hour a week job. Like I work full time." And yeah, I'm fit, but it's because I've worked hard to be fit. There was a time in my life where I wasn't fit. I actually had total spinal fusion when I was 16, and the doctor was like, your life might not be the same. Like you could be paralyzed, you could be fine. Like we don't know. So, that kind of overcomes all odds that, I came through that and it did turn out okay. So it's like, shoot, don't use things as excuses. Cause it's like for a long time, even I'd be like, oh, I can't do that. My back, I've got a bad back. I can't do that. I can't do that. And with that attitude, I couldn't. But it's once you start saying like, no, I can do that. I might not be able to do it today or right now, but if you keep trying, you absolutely can. So I don't like excuses. Um, yeah, it's like there's reasons, there are legit reasons why people can't do things, but most of the time I've learned it's just an excuse. It's like not fine to it and you actually like set the time aside. Anyone can do it. Like I can do it. I'm just a normal person. Like so can everybody else.
And going outside is free, so it's like, okay, what's stopping you? Right? Like, yeah, it's super free. So like, and yeah, like, I mean, I think, like you said, like, I like the what you said, like, there's reasons, but there's, yeah, there are reasons, but not excuses. Like, no
Mm,
excuses, right? Because I think you're right on that.
huge difference. Yeah, huge difference.
Yeah, huge difference. And because I do like get a lot of people like telling me like, did you quit your job? Like, why are you like? Because like I started posting fishing stuff all the time now, like on my main account. They're like, what? Did you quit fishing? Like, no, I just I've gone like an hour here, an hour there. Like sometimes I just carry a rod in my car, and if I see like, oh wait, I have like an hour before I go somewhere else, like I'll just stop buying fish.
Yeah, I spend every weekend backpacking. I've gone every weekend since like mid-May, but that means like, working all week. And I play softball, so I like work all week, I play softball, and on the weekend instead of sleeping in and getting rest, I'm like up really killing myself on these hikes because I want to do it. And I want to be there.
Yeah,
Like, I am tired all the time, but that's all right. It's worth it for me. And it's worth it to get out there.
it's like you're tired, but at the same time energized to keep going, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. So
yeah,
I'm insomniac anyway, so I'm like, I don't sleep that much regardless. I guess it doesn't matter.
yeah, it's weird. It's weird because like I know people that like can run off of 4 hours of sleep perfectly fine without any like stimulant like coffee or anything like that.
I'm like, how? Because like, if I have insomnia, I can. But like, if I just am, screwing around and I stay up hella late, oh god, I feel like death. And Nick will be like, I slept 2 hours, it's fine. I'm like, what? It's not. Like, how do you do this? I would die.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. Like the some of the people that have told me I can sleep like that I know sleep on 4 hours just because I lived with them at one point in my life. Um, yeah, like they're always busy, like doing different things. Like they're doing rugby, they're doing at the time they were doing school, but rugby, school, and then plus trying to do their side hustle. And there's people that sleep 8 hours and they wake up still tired.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Oh no. But I don't think that's you though, because I mean you just said it yourself. Like you on the weekends you don't sleep well just to go
Yeah.
hiking and stuff. That's about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, but like I think yeah, back to the point where we're trying to make that a lot of it, like you said, is excuses. But I think also too, like when you're talking about like how you went backpacking solo, like a lot of people are afraid of being alone with their thoughts, right? Their own thoughts. Because I always tell people like, have you ever, right? Yeah, have you ever like
Sort stuff.
tried weapon?
Oh, I said that's how you sort stuff out.
Exactly, yeah. And I've always asked several people like, have you ever like just taken a car ride with no music? And they're like, no, you should try it. And they don't try it, I guess, because they're afraid of like I'm gonna be bored or whatever. But like the whole entire trip from California to Texas, I think all but like 4 hours of that trip, it was a 23 hour trip. 4 hours of that were the only like 4 hours that actually had any noise, and that was just because I was listening to two podcast episodes from something, and everything. The entire rest of the time was just silence, and I was looking at all the stuff that I was passing by, and then, like you said, sorting some stuff out and everything, and definitely, I think, made the transition of going from California to Texas because I left all my family behind. So I'm like, out here. And yeah, I think it helped a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important too that people are bored sometimes. Like if you're bored, like you should be, you know. I think especially with just how overstimulated we are as a society, people don't have an opportunity to just be bored. And I think sometimes a lot of really good thoughts about life or thoughts about your life or kind of introspective thoughts happen because you're bored and you have time to yourself and you're just sitting there like, oh, what do I do? And I'm like, whenever I'm wondering that, I'm like, well, what's something about me that I don't like and how can I change it? I'm like making lists about things I want to improve on. But I think a lot of people just get distracted with the phones and the screens and the talking and the people and all this stuff. And it's like, that has a time and a place, but you have to have that time to be bored because otherwise you're just not, I don't think you're having that important kind of introspective time.
Right. And I think I was gonna say you are the second person that has said that boredom is good for the same reason too. Like because the other person, yeah, I think the other person that I know they were on the podcast. They mentioned it briefly. They were talking about how like I think a lot of it like why we have lost a lot of the creativity as a society. Like we see like not to bash Marvel, but you see a bunch of stuff being remade and all this stuff like like there's no creativity anymore because no one's really bored anymore. Like we don't having like if you're bored, you're like you said, you're constantly thinking of certain things to improve. And you're
Yeah.
like, whoa, well maybe I should work on this and I'll just work on that. Or maybe like, hey, I have an idea for why don't I just try making a new comic book or something? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the second person to really say that. So
Oh, that's
I
ironic.
think what happened?
True. That's ironic, so it means it's true.
I was gonna say, yeah, there's definitely some truth behind it for sure.
100% true.
Yeah, because I often think about like technology, like yeah, it's supposed to have brought us together, but it actually it's done the opposite. It's driven us further apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's like I'm on Instagram. I post my pictures and stuff, but yeah, it's like the people who live on there and just like their only kind of good feeling they can get about themselves is based off of how many likes their picture got by all these people that they don't even know. It's just like, dude, you gotta get that from you. Like you can't depend on other people for that. Like you just have to have that time to yourself and like, yeah, just like yourself, I guess.
The way I've viewed Instagram for the longest time is like more of like kind of just my personal collage, like just
Mhm.
post memories that I want to post. And I got it a little. I mean, at the beginning when I started again doing the fishing stuff, like I think I got sucked into that whole influencer thing type of thing, and it's like, ugh, I hated it.
Bad at that. I'm not very, I don't know. I always tell Nick, I'm like, you're so good at being neutral because I'm like, if I think something stupid, I'll be like, nah, that sucks. Like people's skills are kind of poor. I'm like, yeah, that's okay.
Well, yeah, it's just weird because like I see people like a lot of people that I see like not even just in fishing community, but just in general on Instagram, they'll try to like cater to a certain brand, right? And that's fine if you like the brand of whatever, like shoes or whatever, and or in my case, like fishing lures and stuff. But it's like a lot of it is like to just try to get like a mention from them, right? And some people can was it compartmentalize like that between seeking like approval and that, right, and just that activity, and that's fine. But I feel like a lot of like, especially like with teenagers, a lot of it like it starts messing with their head really.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
one of the things that I do like about Instagram now is that they have a feature where you can hide your like count.
Oh,
So
yeah, I heard about. I'm like, I don't think I care enough. Like, that's another complicated phone thing I don't want to figure out.
all you have to do is just go to the post and just hide the like count. It's not too difficult.
Oh my god, it's a cool waterfall. I'll put that on.
Yeah, but
But not like
it
that's fine.
yeah, and it's really beneficial because like so you have a lot of people judging you, and then sometimes that might for some reason resonate with them, and they will start hating for some odd reason. I don't know why. I mean, people, but it also keeps you from like, all right, well, if I don't have that many likes, I don't want the entire world doesn't have to know how many likes I really get per post. If they like my post, they'll like it. If not, all right, keep move on.
That's not why you do it. You shouldn't do it for the likes, I guess. Just do it because you think.
Exactly. Just because what?
Just because you think it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times you should post like what you want and what you like, and
Yeah.
people don't see it.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah. No, yeah, but in terms of so one thing that I wanted to mention or actually talk about is the backpacking thing when you were talking about like you put 40 pounds like right off the bat.
Oh yeah, it was stupid. Yeah, it was, yeah, I just like had cheap like budget. I'd never gone before. I'm like, yeah, I'll just do this. Um, yeah, and I brought like I lugged like a tripod out there and a film camera and a digital camera. Yeah, it was like 40 pounds. It was ridiculous. Like, yeah, I just remember like just my knees buckling the second I put it on. I'm like, oh crap, what am I doing? And what was worse is so I got to the spot and I decided to do it in like mid-October. So it was like really, really cold. It was like 26. And I thought I was gonna die. I was like shivering all night. And I'm like, why the heck am I out here? Um, I was hella scared too. It was just like really eerie being by myself, like just out in the woods. I'm like, man, this goes against everything that everybody's ever told me to do. Growing up, you're like, oh, don't do it by yourself. It's not safe. And especially as a woman, they're like, oh, you can't go alone. Like, you're a woman, you can't go. And, it's like being told that your whole life. And then, you'd be like, well, I'm going to go anyway. It's still like feels a little bit off. And you're like, oh crap, why am I doing this? But yeah, it was really scary and I was shivering and I was just sore from the backpack. And I peeked out my tent at one point and I just saw the Milky Way just above the lake. And I had this feeling of being like so small and insignificant. And I took such comfort in that. I'm like, oh, thank God, I don't actually matter that much. Like, it just, it made me feel the world better. I'm like, the world just keeps going regardless of what's going on in your life or happening. Like, the world keeps going. And that was a kind of a feeling that seemed to, it was weird. Like, it happened that night, the first night I solo backpacked, and then a month later it happened when I learned I lost my house. And I ended up going, I think I found out the night prior, and then the next morning I had to go to the mall because I had put these glass gauges in and they irritate my ears if I sleep in them. And I was like, my gauges cannot close. Like, I've lost everything. I'm not losing my gauges. So I had to go to the mall and buy some silicone ones. And it was the weirdest feeling being in the mall, knowing I'm homeless. And everyone around me is just going like normal. And I'm like, what the hell is like, what is that? And it was kind of the same feeling of like the world goes on. And at first it was really depressing because I'm like, guys, like, hello, I'm having the worst day of my life. Like, shouldn't you? But then I'm like, well, no one cares. Like, it doesn't matter. It's a very small blip in the grand scheme of life. And yeah, it's like, well, okay, it happened. You have no control over that. So you just get over it now. You don't dwell on things that happened and you can't fix. You just have to move forward. And yeah, it was that feeling of being small and insignificant. And I find that to be so comforting in a way, because it's like, oh man, it keeps going. Like, it's just going to keep going on. It's not the end of the world. It's fine. Like, it's weird that feeling resonates every once in a while with things. And I'm like, oh, there that is. Like, I felt that before.
So you had your what is it, disconnect to reconnect moment, basically. Like you disconnected from the
Yeah.
internet and all that stuff, not by choice, because obviously,
Yeah, no. But now it's weird. I put myself in situations where I really have to accept that type of adversity and I enjoy it. You know,
yeah.
it was like when I lost my home, all I could focus on is like, gotta find a new home, gotta find a new home. And then that didn't feel right. I'm like, just gotta move back, just gotta move back. And then I moved back and I'm like, that doesn't feel right. And then I'm like, gotta get out of the trailer. And I'm like, this isn't right either. And it's because maybe like it doesn't matter. Like, the home doesn't matter because that's not where my heart is. My heart's not in it. My heart's in backpacking. So it's like, another thing too is it's like, don't just do things because people expect you to, and like be totally okay with like being that weirdo that's like, no, I don't want kids and I kind of actually just want to like maybe live in a van or like live on the trail or like not really have a stable situation. Like, I think that that's okay. And yeah, I think that a lot of people too, I feel like a lot of depression too comes from just like the weird societal pressures that are put on you, you know,
Absolutely.
to do certain things and be certain ways. And it's like you can fake it pretty well, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, that that's not you. And then you're just feeling really unfulfilled and really sad. And then you don't know why. And you're like, you know, your life is empty and you're wondering why. And it's because you're not really being you.
Absolutely. And it's really like when you're facing adversity, um, like, I mean, generally speaking, of course, people, I think where we make the mistake is that we don't ask, okay, how can I do this? What can I do to make this better? Or what can I do to get through this? We don't ask those questions to ourselves. Sometimes I think that's the pitfall, right? Like, because we instead of thinking that way, we think, oh, well, um, okay, life sucks. It's not getting any better.
Why me?
Everything
Yeah.
sucks. Why me? Yeah, exactly. Why me?
Life doesn't care.
Uh, what happened?
I said, because life doesn't care about you and bad things happen sometimes. Like, that's just how it is. You just
Yeah,
accept that and move on and be the best you can be for it.
yeah, and I'll be guilty at that. Like sometimes I've had that situation where it's like, why me? But then I was always kind of like a little self contradicting because there's times where I would think that way, and then there was times where I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna get through this. But it's like, why can't I be consistently on that spectrum? Like, oh yeah, I can always get through this. Yeah, I never understood that.
Yeah. I mean, I flip flop too. Like just last week, I was terribly depressed because it was smoky. And I'm like, oh God, like, why do I live here? Like, my life is pointless. And then I just went on like a really long walk and I feel totally better. So I do it too.
Yeah,
Everyone does.
yeah, and like like I yeah, it really does make you feel a lot better. Like when you're like realize like, hey, this is where I'm at, and it's okay. Or this is what's going on, and it's okay. Or how am I gonna get better? And like again, we fall in that pitfall where we don't think uh, positively in the sense that like, okay, positively, and of course, yeah, realistically, you don't want to be over optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's also a pitfall, in my opinion. But like there's that I just started seeing. I don't know if it's a proverb or what you would call it, but there's like a story of like twin boys. They had an alcoholic father. One of them grew up to be an alcoholic. The other one never touched alcohol ever in his life. They asked the alcoholic, "Why are you like this?" It's like, "Because I watched my father." And they asked the sober one, like, "Why have you never drinking?" Because I watched my father.
Mm.
So it's like how you process, you know, I get, perspective really is what
Yeah.
determines. Yeah,
I mean, because ultimately you don't have control over much. The only thing you have control over is your reactions. So
absolutely.
you can have something terrible happen and you could go, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. Or you can say, how am I going to make this work for me? Or, how am I going to get out of this on the better side here? Yeah, I think it's just how you react to things. And initially, it's okay to be like upset, of course. But I think as long as you come around to that point, eventually you're pretty good.
I think, and that's another point to the situation to this basically, right? Because I mean, like you said, like it's okay to react a certain way in the beginning.
Hmm.
And I think that's how we process certain things is going on. And if you need to express yourself a little bit, that's fine. But then you gotta be productive. You gotta get on that pace.
Can't get stuck. You get
Yeah.
stuck stagnant, and you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and a lot of it is complacency.
Hmm.
I mean, I grew up in a pretty deep, not a bad area, but pretty bad area. And yeah, I saw people that were conformed to just getting by.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is not me. This is not gonna be me. Like, and it's no offense to anybody that I grew up with, but it's just like this is just not what I want to do. Like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what like. At the time, I didn't think of the word purpose, right? But part of it was like, this is not my purpose. Like, I don't know, like just being stuck here. No way. Like, I gotta do something.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting point too. Yeah, because just going back to the thing I said about like societal pressures and stuff. It's kind of funny because once you find your purpose or you think you found it, but if it doesn't quite line up with like what you should be doing, all of a sudden there's all these like, oh well, you're just young, or you'll change your mind later, or things like that. It's like, I don't think so though. It's like the whole like, go to college, get a degree, have a career, have a family, get a job, get a house, get a car, get a house, all this stuff. It's like, yeah, that might be for some people, but it's definitely not for everyone. for sure. So it's like the one person's goals don't translate to another's. I feel like we do an especially bad job of putting everybody in the same box in that aspect.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny that you brought up college because I agree 100% with what you just said. Like, I mean, I fell in that trap, but I was very fortunate that I got lucky, or, I don't know if I was lucky or it was just pure, because I willed it. I was able to not get so much in debt, right? But that's the problem that we have with a lot of people in debt, and they're stressed out because, like you said, societal pressures. You have to go to school, you have to go, otherwise you're not going to make something out of yourself. Meanwhile, people that are plumbers, electricians that never went to a 4-year university or none of that stuff, they went to a trade school or making just as much as I am after like X amount of years of experience. What
Yeah.
the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a degree in photography, which I use just every day. I work in manufacturing. I never use my degree. I'm like, I do manual labor. So it's like, don't use, but I felt pressured to go through college because no one in my family had. And I was like the smart kid growing up. So it's like, oh, you're smart, you have to go. Like, if you don't go, it's a waste. I'd hear that so much. Oh, if you don't go, it's a waste. It's a waste. And it's like, yeah, but I like art. Like, yeah, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to like draw. Like, sorry, that's what I like. So yeah, it's kind of funny how all that works. It's like, I don't really think it's all that important, really. If you want to go,
Yeah.
if you want a career, awesome. But if you just like want to kind of have a day job where you just like work, you're not emotionally invested and you just kind of work for your weekends or what have you, that's fine too. Like there's different people in the world and you can just, like whatever makes you happy, you should just do. Ignore all that pressure shit, Oh, sorry. I don't know if I can cuss, but
You're good. You're good. No, but yeah, but you're right.
yeah, but I'm sorry. My work ruined me because they just let me say shit as much as I want. So I just say it all the time now. I'll be like in the store and I'll be like, oh. Cashier's like, what the heck did she just say? I'm like, I'm sorry. I have poor social skills. My job's not helping.
No, you're good. But yeah, like some people are happy with just going to work, grabbing a beer after work, watching sports. That's perfectly fine. If
Yeah.
that's what they honestly feel like, they're happy. Yeah. I saw that, like, and not to badmouth anybody that goes to college and actually made a career and are fine, but I saw that wasn't the end all be all, even though society was kind of making it be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that was a little outdated, or actually it is a little outdated because it's not the same as like, like before where like, things were a little bit better where you go to school and yeah, you could be, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But also we have the internet now. Like that's the huge difference. Like we have the internet, like there's pros and cons to the internet, of course. And we've talked about, the negatives of like Instagram, for example, but by the same token, you can use Instagram, you can use the internet to like, you have people that are drawing art like in sand or, putting like, there's videos of just like people putting different color sands and then making like a design at the end, like, and they get a bunch of views or they can sell like the art. Like the other day I heard somebody, I read somewhere that somebody sold an invisible painting for 18K or something like that.
Oh, I want to do that.
Right? Right? So it's like, if you have that making money, like anything can really make money if you really like put a lot of passion into what you want to do. I mean, you just have to find a way. Like, and sometimes some things might be harder than others. That's just what it is. I mean, sometimes there's a bigger market for something and it's a little bit easier to do it. Sometimes a certain market is a little saturated. So that means you just have to work harder to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, you got to put in the time into it.
Yeah, I think sometimes too, it's okay to do things just for not money. Like, also, I get a question a lot, especially at my work, because they're like, you love backpacking and you love hiking. Why aren't you in the Forest Service? Or why aren't you a guide? Or why aren't you a ranger? Or why aren't you a lot of things? And I just kept I keep telling people the same thing. I'm like, I don't want to make my passions my job because I'm worried that I'll grow to hate them. Because once something becomes a job and once something becomes an obligation and you're doing it for like, a tangible thing, it gets a little bit convoluted. And I would hate for that to ever happen. So I'm always like, nah, this is, I don't want to do something that I'm passionate about. I'd rather just like have a job that I can tolerate. Like, that's not horrible. That like still pays my bills and, I like, and it's okay. And that's fine. But yeah, I think sometimes there's too much focus on like, well, how are you making money? It's like, well, money only goes so far. It's like, that's why you see all these rich people committing suicide, because it doesn't make you happy. It can make things easier, but ultimately I don't think it makes you happier, especially if you're doing something that you don't like.
Yeah, I mean, because I know there's that saying that money doesn't buy happiness, which I'm not going to say that I agree with it or disagree with it, because I feel it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, like you said, like we have to have some level of money to pay bills so we can do what we love, right? I
Fortunately.
think it's when we get caught up in that rat race where we're just paying bills all the time and we don't do anything that we love or no outlets.
Or just,
That's what.
yeah, working 40, 50, 60 hours a week because you got to get this new car because the neighbor has that new car, and you're in this neighborhood, you got to paint your house, or you just, it's like keeping up with the Joneses. And then it's like, okay, well, you're working 60 hours a week and you have a really awesome car, but do you get to actually like enjoy that? Probably not, because you're working all the time. And then when you get home, you're too tired to actually enjoy anything. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, why are you just collecting this crap that, like, when you die, it doesn't even matter? Like I worked in a retirement home for a number of years, and I saw a lot of people on their deathbeds, and a lot of them, said, I wish I did more. Nobody said,
Mhm.
I wish I had bought that house, or I wish I had that better car, or it was nothing of like that. It was always, I wish I had done more. And that really like resonated with me. I'm like, dang, like, yeah, why are we trying to buy all these like new clothes and all this stuff for not even for you, just because it's like what you're supposed to do, or because so and so has it. It's like, why are we even doing that? And then you're just left on your deathbed with regrets because you spent your time doing that and not what you actually cared about.
Yeah, and yeah, and honestly, like to what you were saying, like about not making your passion is your job. Yeah, because and I do.
Not for
I'm
me.
sorry.
I said some people that works out great. Not for me. Not for.
Well, it's because like there's like I feel like which is what I was gonna say right now. Like I feel like there was like a very very thin line that you have to kind of like straddle on, and you have to keep balance between, like you said, like making sure that even though it's your job, your passions are not gonna die.
Hmm.
Like right now, in the wrestling. I mean, I watch wrestling. So in the wrestling world right now, there was like a big return, kind of like like a huge return like to the actual industry, and where the wrestler is he goes by CM Punk, and he left the WWE, which everybody knows what the WWE is like the biggest one. Like if anybody knows like a little bit about wrestling, they know that what those letters stand for. But that was like the one that everybody wanted to try again on because it's the biggest stage that has the most exposure. He was on there for a while. He was not treated well, and ultimately he quit. And he didn't wrestle for like 5 or 6 years because again his passion was killed because of the job.
Yeah.
Because like in that promotion, it was more of a job than it was him expressing himself through his passion,
Yeah.
which he had done before going to that. And then now that he coming back, like in the very first, because you know how like they do like the promos, like they talk in promos and stuff like that.
Nothing about sports.
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, you can even know. I don't even know if that's a sport
Wrestling,
itself.
like what's like promos like?
Well, like when like they're talking like to the camera or something, like
Oh,
when
like
they're
little intro things.
yeah, let's call them the intro things. Yeah.
Sorry.
So so when he came back, so there's a different promotion that started up because 4 people, same situation as that guy CM Punk, they were tired. The promotion was killing their passion, so they made their own promotion where they're trying to make it better. Where it's like, okay, we don't control you as much as this company does. I mean, there's some rules, some guidelines that you have to follow, but outside of that, you're good. So he came back to that promotion. That guy CM Punk, very first thing he said, he goes, "I had to leave the very first thing, the very thing that I loved because it made me sick."
Hmm.
Because again, I feel like that thin line where it's like, it's hard
Yeah.
to really balance it, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, for some people, it works great. You see some people like super successful and they're doing what they love, but I think like even it's just the weird pressure you get. You're like, everybody's like, oh, you like this thing, you have to make a career out of it, make money off of it, monetize it. It's like, no, dude, I don't want to. Like, I just want to do it for the sheer enjoyment of doing it. Like, I don't want to get anything tangible from this. It's like, I just want the experience mostly. It's more
Yeah,
important.
and there's two schools of thought, I think, because you have the one where it's a little bit more conventional, I guess, where it says like it's like, oh, make a lot of money now, that way you can enjoy your 30s, late 30s.
Decrepit and can't get out of bed. Because that's what happens. It's like, I saw it. It's like they save all this money and then they're old and can't do anything. And it's like, what? Like, I'm not waiting until I'm 65. Like, if I even make it that far, you don't know. It's like, why not like live now?
So yeah, and there is that one that, because that school of thought is a little outdated, because yes, that's what I was thinking about when I first heard that, like, right, make your own money now. Like, why do I want to focus so much on like making my money now? I want to enjoy like my youth, right? And but I think it evolved now because of, again, the internet. So there's a lot younger people like in early 20s that are making money and stuff. So there's that kind of school of thought, and then there's also the one where it's like, if you work hard on your passions, you will make the money to keep it going. But then it goes back to what you're saying about the job, your passion being your job. So it's like it's a lot of things, being encompassed. It's a lot more nuanced than just like, hey, make your money, you'll enjoy it later, or hey, work whatever your passion is and you'll make your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fine line. For sure.
Yeah, it's super complicated. I mean, and the thing is, like we're all wired differently mentally. So it's
Yeah.
like one blueprint will work for somebody, or maybe 10, hundreds.
Yeah, it's like, just because the majority seems to do something doesn't mean that that's what like the answer is. Like, for example, it's like, I'm 28 and I don't want children, and everybody is always like, oh no, you'll change your mind, no, you want kids, you just don't know it yet. Or it's like, now why do I have, like, why does it matter to you? Like, dude, it's my life, like, who cares? But I feel like you get that with any kind of thing that like the vast majority isn't doing. I've gotten all kinds of questions like, oh, well, why do you have tattoos on your hands? It's like, well, because I like them. Like,
Yeah.
what's the matter to you? Don't like, if you don't like it, don't look. Like, who cares? Like, focus on yourself. I feel like a lot of people spend time focusing on others, and it's like, man, if you took that time and you like spun it around and focused it within, like, you could probably make a lot of progress. Be a little introspective.
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, it happens a lot in the fishing community. Some
Yeah.
people get mad because
Nick's told
wait,
me.
yeah. So it's oh man, like it's a little upset. It's a little upsetting because like I think it happens a lot in a lot of different communities, just
Probably.
because,
Yeah.
yeah, everywhere, because again, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like with fishing, it's like, oh, this lure, it's garbage. It's just for this, or this lure is that. I'm like, dude, just let people fish however the hell they want to fish.
Yeah, I think it's like that in every community, because even in backpacking, it's like, you got to be ultra light. And I mean, I am on the lighter spectrum, but I'm not doing it to be trendy. I'm doing it because I'm 104 pounds and I literally cannot carry that much weight. Like, I'm tiny. So it's like, I don't want to be injured and I want to have fun. So it's like, I'm going to have a light pack. But, you get these elitist communities and they're like, oh, if you're not sub 9 pounds, like, I can't talk to you. Or like, oh, you have an REI tent. They look down on that. And it's just like, dude, like, who cares? It's not your trip. If they want a whole, 40 pounds of stuff and they're having fun doing that, let them. What's it matter? Yeah. I think it's just in every community, every aspect of life. It's just this constant like comparison. It's just really unhealthy.
All right. Speaking of backpacking weight, I have a question. So, because I am a very indecisive person, so I've tried making survival bags, like, especially because like in Texas there's tornadoes, and then right now what we have with COVID and a bunch of other stuff. So would you put cans of tuna in your backpacking backpack?
No, not cans.
I put
I would put tuna packets because they're lighter and the trash is less bulky. But like, if I was car camping, a can of tuna wouldn't be the end of the world, I guess.
Well, I'm a dumbass, and I put 2 giant stacks of canned tuna in my backpacking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, my mom actually, that's funny that you brought that up, because my mom recently started like canning and pressure cooking. I don't know, they're kind of preppers a little bit. And I'm like, that's cool, do your thing, mom. But she's like, I'd love to mail you guys canned goods, because Nick and I are hiking the PCT next year. And she's like, I'd love to mail you some canned goods. And I'm like, please don't send me cans, mom. Like, I can't do that. And she's like, what about jars? And I'm like, no, mom, not glass jars either. Like, that's cute. I'm like, I can't bring those. It was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, can't like.
Dude, that's not gonna work. Like, that's so heavy. Come on.
Yeah, and I brought 2 6-can stacks, so we can imagine. Like, I'm like, I got this. And then when it actually came down to actually picking that bag up for it, because I think maybe 3 months ago, I want to say,
Mhm.
there was a realistic chance of like the tornado touching down the area where I live, and I was just like, oh shit! All right, trying to get the bag, and I picked it up. I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah. You're like, oh, those are cans.
yeah. I forgot I had cans and like 3 heavy flashlights, and it was like,
Uh, yeah. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah. So I think Nick knows that I recently was trying to re-update my bug out bag, and it was for that reason because it was too heavy.
Yeah, I have one too in my trunk because during the fire I got stuck at work, so I couldn't even make it home. We heard that it was in town, and I went to leave, and it was like, "You're not getting back." And so I was like, "Oh my god, okay." So now, because the hardest part about that was finding clothes my size, because all I had was one pair of pants, because I just had the clothes I was wearing. And I mean, people were amazing. They were donating like all these clothes, and it was just so many bags of clothes. But all the women's clothes were like tube tops and dresses, and like I said, I work in manufacturing, and I'm like, I'm not wearing a spaghetti strap to a machine shop. Like, I cannot do this. Is not gonna work. So I'm like,
No,
I was just wearing men's clothes because that's like what I could find. And it was like pants especially was hard because I'm tiny, and like I went to Rite Aid and they didn't even have my size pants. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I guess we're the same pair of pants for a week until I figure something out. Like, so yeah, I've got pants, like 2 pairs of pants in there because I won't do that again.
well, there
Like,
you go.
all I need is pants and I'm good. Totally fine.
Yeah, and I mean,
Maybe a t-shirt.
look, and a t-shirt.
Yeah. No spaghetti.
Ah, and like honestly, like I know the whole prepping thing sometimes has like a negative connotation just because like, oh, you see the show like Doomsday Preppers and all that stuff, so you think, oh, these guys are a bunch of crazy people.
It's cool. I mean, my family is, but I love them. They're great. But pretty cool. It's like, man, might as well. Like, I mean, I'm building a camper van because I'm like, man, if I ever have to evacuate, like I need somewhere to sleep. So I'm like, well, if I build this van, like I'll have somewhere to sleep and that problem will be solved. And like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need anything else. Like, I got a water filter. I just need to find a creek. Like, I can just eat powdered mashed potatoes. That's fine. Like, it'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it. I mean, and the word prepper has a negative connotation, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like,
Yeah.
I have a smoker now, and I need to start making some jerky. That way, I can cryovac that, and
Yeah.
and I could pack that in my bug out bag for sure.
Yeah. You'll be living large. You could like sell your jerky to other like refugees or something. You could be like, okay, what don't I have that they have that I want to trade my jerky for? And it'll be like a hot commodity item because nobody's got that. So I think
Yeah,
you're set. Yeah.
I'm like, I'll trade you this piece of jerky for that bottle of water or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, oh crap, you ran out of whatever. I'll just trade my jerky for it.
Yeah, and I'm learning stuff like that because at the end of the day, we're prepping, but it's also about being accountable and being self-sufficient.
Oh yeah, being self-sustained is so important. I learned that backpacking, like backpacking solo especially, because it's like, if you fuck up, like no one's gonna help you but you. Like you got to figure it out because you're by yourself and you're 40 miles away from anything, and you're like, oh shoot, like what do I do? So it's like I think that that's really important to just be as self-sustained and independent as possible. And it's like, yeah, if somebody calls you a prepper, who really cares? It's just that's your thing. I think it's cool. I think it's a really good idea because you never know what's going to happen. You know, and if God forbid something did terrible, terrible did happen. at least you would have a chance. Like, like me, I'm always like, okay, like if I was homeless, like I would go to this bridge and I'd sleep under it, or I'd like take my van here, or it's like, you always have a plan. But I think that that's important, because it could happen. I learned that during the fire. Like crazy shit happens all the time to normal people, and you don't see it coming. It just like kicks you in the face, and now you're in it. It's better to
Yeah.
do it with like a good set of skills at least, or like an idea.
No, yeah, and that's an important lesson. Learn some skills that you can apply when it hits the fan.
Oh yeah,
And
sure, because it will.
it will. And I think that and not being complacent.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yep, for sure.
Because like you said, you never know when life might hit you, and it's like at that point, life does not care about you, like you said.
No,
So,
you gotta look out for you, because if you don't know, someone else is going to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice when humans get into a community and they also help each other. It's super nice.
Yeah, I mean,
but don't always count on it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, it's like not to undermine that at all. I saw like the fire helped me restore my faith in humanity. Like I can be a little bit cynical sometimes. I just get really impatient with people and just like the dumb stuff they do. And I'm like, come on, like, why does it have to be like this? Like, I'm an introvert. I just want to be by myself. And just the generosity and kindness of the people after the fire, like, complete strangers, like it really humbled me. And I saw the good in humanity. But at the same time, you cannot rely on that. Like, you got to be so thankful for that and just feel so blessed. But you cannot rely on that because it might not be there. It's just a pleasant surprise if it is.
Definitely. And on that note, we are 4 minutes before the hour mark. So this is normally the time where I take to kind of wrap things up. But do you have any final thoughts? Any anything you want to highlight that we talked about earlier?
I just encourage everybody to be themselves, I think.
Yeah, it's important that whatever endeavor that you have, you make sure that of course, there's evolution. We go through that, whether it's spiritually, physically, or whatever. But like you said, like stay true to yourself, because ultimately, I think there's a lot of wholesomeness that you can get out of that, and it's good for the body, good for the mind. And you can fortify yourselves, and also, like we were talking about earlier, the key is self-accountability and self-sufficiency. Like we want to be self-sufficient. That way we're ready for anything that life throws at us unexpectedly.
Or we throw it ourselves.
Or we throw it ourselves, yeah. I've had that habit where I kind of make some bad decisions and I'm like, oh, well, I look at the situation I found myself in.
Yeah, what I basically did is I'm like, ooh, that was some adversity that I didn't handle well. I'm going to keep throwing adversity at myself until I'm good at it.
But see, that's different than what I was referring to, because I knew that like my decision was stupid and it was going to lead to a bad situation in the future, and I still did it anyway. Whereas like you, at least, you're putting yourself in that situation as a way of improvement. Mine was just recklessness.
Well, that's okay too. It happens.
I mean, that makes for good stories after the fact if you survive, but
I've been there for sure too many times. And I'm like, yeah, so I did this thing and it turned out really bad, but I had a good time. Like looking back, it wasn't that bad, but at the time, not so fun.
Yeah. So let everybody know where they can find you, because I know you do have an Instagram page. I am blanking on the name. Is it Hike More?
Yeah, it's hike_more.
There you go. I remember it was that. Yeah. And also, I know that you and Nick are prepping for a huge backpacking trip. I think it's like a few months, right?
Yeah, so about 5.5, 6 months. We're going to do the Pacific Crest Trail next year.
That's next year? What time next year?
In April, sometime in April. Yeah.
Okay. I definitely want to have both you guys on at the same time before and after that. That way you guys can talk about that trip, because that seems like there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited. I'm ready.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, like you said, you're always welcome on the podcast if you ever want to talk about anything else that's mental health related or outdoors related. That's the whole point of this. And yeah, like, I mean, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate you like making time for this. So of
course.
Yeah. All right. So for everybody else that's still watching, still listening, we appreciate your support. Please, if you like this episode or any other episodes, please go ahead and share, like, and subscribe, whether in YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Your support allows these conversations to keep going, and they're definitely really good conversations. So We appreciate any support, and be on the lookout soon because there's going to be merch coming up soon. Again, all to support the podcast and keep it going. But yeah, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did. And Maddie, say goodbye to everybody else. And yeah.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. So before we cut off, stay on for like 2 minutes, but yeah. All right, everybody. Talk to you guys soon.